Live from the Scripps Studios, this is 10 News.
For the first time, we're hearing from a family that nearly lost their son to an E. coli outbreak at the San Diego County Fair.
But the memories and seeing him with a breathing tube and being sedated and just wondering where your little boy is just heartbreaking.
That family and two others just filed a claim against the association that operates the fair. Good evening, I'm Lindsay Pena.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Team 10 investigator Adam Rakusin spoke with the mother who says she also got sick after their visit to the fair. You can just hear the heartbreak in her voice.
Yeah, this was an incredibly emotional conversation that we had. The family spent weeks in the hospital, at times not knowing if their 2-year-old was going to survive. Tonight, this mother is talking so you know the very real emotions she felt and why she hopes you never have to.
He's the most energetic, happy little boy.
That's how Nicole Lopez describes her 2-year-old son, Cristiano. All she wants for him is to be happy and healthy. But Nicole says a trip to the San Diego County Fair in June shook the easygoing sense of security she had.
Some of the scariest moments in our lives.
A few days after the fair, Nicole says she felt sick, the worst stomach flu she's ever experienced. But eventually it passed. As she was getting better, Cristiano got a fever.
We were thinking maybe he's coming down with a cold.
The fever didn't let up and symptoms got worse. Then Nicole saw the news. The 2-year-old Jedediah Cabezuela died from E. coli after visiting the fair.
I was scared at that moment and worried that he came across it somehow.
Nicole says Cristiano was admitted to the hospital, but his symptoms kept getting worse.
Were you worried at that moment that your son was dying?
Yeah. I did. I was scared. I hated hearing the words in the ICU. To think my baby was going to the ICU. I lost it.
Cristiano was moved to Rady Children's Hospital. Doctors there told Nicole his kidneys were failing.
They were going to start prepping him for dialysis. And with this condition, that's like the last hope.
For days, Nicole and her husband watched the numbers on the machine, praying he'd respond to treatment.
I didn't know if he had it in him. And I just wanted to switch places so bad with him.
And then, the news they'd been praying for.
Instant relief that they said that they do see him coming home. They just didn't know how long it was going to take.
Today, Nicole and 2 other families filed a legal claim with the 22nd District Agricultural Association. The Del Mar Fairgrounds is operated by the association. The claim alleges the illnesses were preventable.
Allowing food and drink in the exhibits, not having an attendant to make sure that everybody thoroughly washed their hands before they could leave, are 2 very major faults in the system that was present at the fair that day.
Ron Simon and Ben Coughlin represent the families.
No family should have to go through that process. No family should have to fear for that when they go to the fair.
Today, Cristiano is recovering. Nicole says the reason he's alive.
I honestly think we have our son because of the little boy that passed away. I think their little boy saved our boy's life.
And a spokesperson for the Agricultural Association says they can't comment on matters of pending litigation. One thing that Nicole wanted to get across was urging parents to know the symptoms. If something seems wrong, act, don't wait.
It seems important, of course, to know the symptoms. What's interesting here is fair officials, when this first happened, said people need to know to wash their hands. Their attorneys are saying they need to have someone to monitor that now, though. That's going to be their case in this.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about that and signs that were present.
Right.
And if there's somebody there telling you should wash their hands, there's a lot that we don't know about this. There's a lot that they don't know about this. So there's still much more to come.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
We did send out an alert after the claim was filed. To get real-time news on your smartphone or tablet, download our free mobile app. Just go to the App Store and search 10 News.
All right, we have some breaking news now. A judge has just allowed the supervised release of a man known as the bolder-than-most serial rapist. Alvin Quarles was convicted of a series of sexual assaults in the 1980s. Our 10 News reporter John Horn is joining us from the downtown courthouse. And John, there was a lot of anger with the judge's decision today.
Yeah, a lot of that and tears and some things that I can't repeat on TV that were yelled during open court from the back of the courtroom as Judge David Gill announced his ruling to a packed courthouse, many of them victims of the bolder-than-most rapist named Alvin Quarles. We were not allowed to bring cameras into the courtroom, but I can tell you a little bit about what he looked like, and we can show you some video here that we have in files. So Quarles is in his 50s. He sat silently. He was wearing glasses. He had a shaved head. He might have had a hearing aid, and he had a white goatee. So he was sentenced to 50 years in the late 80s after he pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting more than 10 women, often at knife point, with their significant others being forced to watch. He's now under treatment in the state's program for violent sex offenders and eligible for this release. Now, Judge Gill granted the conditional release. He said he'd never grant unconditional release. Now, before the hearing, some of the victims and their supporters were staging a rally in front of the courthouse after Cynthia Medina, one of the victims, had some very choice words for the judge. Why don't you take a listen?
He's an idiot. That's all I got to say about Judge Gill. He has no compassion for the community that wants him in that position. He has no compassion for us. I mean, I'm getting more and more upset. I don't know. I'm tired, and it didn't work. What do we do now?
Now, it is unclear where Quarles will end up. There will be a hearing in 30 days. Judge Gill said that the public will be involved. He also said that he does believe at this time that Quarles will stay in the county. We will keep you posted as best we can as things develop. Meanwhile, live from the courthouse downtown, John Horn, 10 News.
Thank you, John. New information is emerging about the gunman who killed 3 people and injured more than a dozen others at the Gilroy Garlic Festival. This evening, investigators are poring over social media posts made by Santino Ligon in an effort to determine a motive in the attack. They say recent posts include white supremacist themes. ABC's Romina Puga is in Gilroy, where survivors are in shock.
Last night, a family food festival suddenly turned deadly when a shooter opened fire.
Oh, they shooting! Who shoot at a garlic festival?
Today, police identifying the gunman as 19-year-old Santino William Ligon.
And I say that name with some hesitation because I don't believe that somebody like this deserves the notoriety or the recognition.
Authorities investigating the suspect's father's house and searching for a motive for the horrific act.
You never think it's going to happen in your town, but look what happens.
The Gilroy community will mourn, but we will get through it.
Police telling us this afternoon that the victims included Trevor Irby in his 20s, 13-year-old Kayla Salazar, and 6-year-old Stephen Romero.
It has to be someone really sick, because shooting a kid.
The shooting began last night around 6 p.m. as the annual food festival was winding down its final night. Police say the gunman was armed with an AK-47 style rifle that was purchased legally in Nevada. They believe he cut through a fence to evade security. He was confronted by Gilroy police officers running security at the festival and shot down in less than a minute.
We had thousands of people there in a very small area. It could have gone so much worse.
Overnight, a manhunt combing the area for a possible accomplice.
We did have reports of a potential second suspect. We don't have any confirmation that any second suspect did any shooting, but we certainly are investigating all leads.
Authorities say there were metal detectors and added security at the festival and are investigating if Ligon had any connections to the event.
The FBI says currently that they don't believe this is related in any form to terrorism, and the investigation continues to be led by local police. In Gilroy, California, Romina Puga, ABC News.
Hospital officials gave an update in the last 30 minutes. Only 5 of the shooting victims are still in the hospital. 3 are in serious condition. The other 2 don't want their conditions known.
Restaurant chain Tapioca Express reached a settlement in a sexual harassment lawsuit involving 2 South Bay franchises. The owner of the Chula Vista and the National City locations is accused of making unwanted sexual advances towards female employees. Tapioca Express will pay more than $100,000 in that settlement. It will also hire an outside monitor to review its sexual harassment policies and procedures.
A major move by the San Diego City Council today to deal with our city's housing crisis. It voted unanimously to include mixed use as a zoning category in the city of San Diego. That change will make it easier and less expensive to build commercial and residential developments. These developments are intended to be located in areas within a half-mile of a transit stop. The council must vote on this a second time to make it official, and that's likely to happen in September.
All right, now to a developing story. President Trump is now adding the Reverend Al Sharpton to his Baltimore tirades. Over the weekend, the president took aim at Congressman Elijah Cummings and his Baltimore area district.
As ABC's Tara Palmieri tells us, the president is now calling the civil rights leader someone who hates whites and cops.
After a weekend of lashing out against Congressman Elijah Cummings, calling Baltimore, a city in his district, a disgusting rat and rodent-infested mess, now President Trump has words for another African-American leader, Al Sharpton, tweeting, "Al is a con man, a troublemaker, always looking for a score, hates whites and cops." This comes as Al Sharpton arrived in Baltimore to weigh in on the brewing controversy.
He has a particular venom for blacks and people of color. He doesn't refer to any of his other opponents or critics as infested.
President Trump started his Monday morning with another sharp attack on Cummings, who is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who currently has investigations into the Trump administration, referring to him and his city as King Elijah's Baltimore fail, and adding, "When the leaders of Baltimore want to see the city rise again, I am in a very beautiful oval-shaped office waiting for your call." Former Republican National Committee chairperson and former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, Michael Steele, calling the attacks a political tactic.
Don't get distracted by the tweet. Don't get blinded by the noise. Don't get all caught up in the ratcheted crazy.
Just last week, Trump was widely condemned as racist for tweeting that 4 minority congresswomen should go back to the, quote, crime-infested countries from which they came. All 4 are U.S. citizens, and 3 of them were born here. That tweet led to this chant at a North Carolina rally. While few Republicans have criticized the president's insults directed at Baltimore, they still plan to hold their Republican retreat there. Tara Palmieri, ABC News, Washington.
2 American service members were gunned down in Afghanistan today. Now, this comes despite talks between the U.S. and the Taliban to end the nearly 18-year-old war. That brings the number of U.S. troops killed in Afghanistan this year to at least 11. The names of those fallen service members are still being withheld until their families are notified.